Brian John Stevenson was born June the 12th, in 1959. Came into a family of 3 existing brothers and sisters. He was always wanting to be the center of attention. He was very athletic, and people wanted to be around him because they could see success in him. And if they saw success in him, they saw success in themselves. When Brian was 19, he realized that Sherry, one of the young ladies that he went to high school with, was his true love and were to be married in May of 1981.
Don Davis was my dad, and my dad was a gentle, kind person, always laughing, definitely a family man. I know that his work he was very good at. He was very highly qualified as a carpenter. One of the things he wanted to do was to move out to the interior and build a log cabin with his sons. His plan was in motion already. He was already set to do that.
Brian first started getting interested in construction in, I think it was about 1979. And then about a year or so later, he was employed by Dominion Construction to work on the Bentall Tower IV as an apprentice carpenter. And I think he felt quite honored and he enjoyed his work.
I think my dad was quite happy about working on the Bentall Tower project. He thought fairly highly of Dominion Construction. He felt that they were a safe company.
January the 7th, 1981, happened to be a sunny Wednesday afternoon when I heard on the radio that there had been a terrible tragedy at the Bentall building, and the hair went up in the back of my neck. I knew something was wrong with him.
I was at school and I got home and my mom was pacing around. She said, "Something's happened at your dad's work," but I don't know what yet. I haven't heard, like she's just little bits on the radio and on the TV. That's probably when I started going into shock.
It's still quite clear in my mind. We had a crew of guys working on Bentall IV, and they had taken the project from street level right up to the 36th floor. They were just about completing the building. They were working on what they call a fly form that can put in place the actual floor of the building. And then once the cement is poured, you can release the form, slide them out, and take it up the next level. And 4 of our members, 1 apprentice and 3 journeymen, were working on and around one of the fly forms when, without warning, it tilted. The table went right off the building, and it went right down from the 36th floor, and 4 of them lost their lives.
I was just walking by, and I saw the platform at the 30th floor coming down free fall. And I noticed like 3 bodies were just twirling around on the edges of the platform, and 3 hard hats that were on. That's the hard hats that made me think there was bodies that were coming down, actually.
There wasn't a crane on the form or anything. They were just trying to slide the form out. And
should there be a crane on it?
No, somehow it slipped. It came, it got away from him and came down.
The way he died haunted a lot of us. You wonder what went through his mind when that happened. What was he thinking? And that's what kept me awake at night.
The thoughts crossed my mind, like, if I could only stop them from going to work that day. If I could have stopped Dad from going to work, or maybe I could have given him a bigger hug or something, You look back and you think, why couldn't I have stopped it? Could I have prevented him from, being killed at work?
There was a terrific amount of anger, and I think you have to understand too in this context that these 4 guys were working with one of the most prominent union contractors in the province with a very, very good safety record. And if it can happen to a well-organized company, what could we expect with some of the other ones that don't necessarily meet all the regulations?
Over time, the media was bringing more and more things out about the company that developed the fly form and engineers that were involved. There was a lot of finger pointing of Was there modifications done to the fly form? Was it installed properly? Was there somebody to blame? I didn't know. I trusted the system to do due diligence, and there was an inquiry to take place, and that took place March of that year.
I was a representative on the coroner's inquest, along with 5 other individuals, and we sat down and listened for 8 days to all the testimony. What comes to mind now is how intense it was, particularly when the 3 widows and a mother were in the inquest day after day, never missed a day.
There's volumes of information, but really at that point, we were just looking for answers, knowledge of what happened.
We established at the inquest the people that make the false work were in error with their design. They didn't meet the basic requirements to be stable when it stood on its own. It was so clear. In fact, the men on the job gave testimony that they had passed the information on to their supervisors and nothing was done about it. And from the evidence, it was clear that safety regulations hadn't been met. It seemed to me it was one of those kind of accidents when you look at, in hindsight, that it could have been prevented.
No, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and still a lot of unsure speculation as to what occurred.
Out of the inquest came a specific recommendation that they needed a construction industry safety inquiry. And they asked the parties in the industry, union, management, the engineers, for representation on that particular committee. And the Minister of Labour did that.
One of the key recommendations of the coroner's inquest was to have a process for monitoring follow-up to the investigation of the tragedy to see if there were needed to be any changes made to regulations around fly forms before another disaster happened. And then to go on a broader basis looking into whatever other issues needed looking into with respect to safety on construction projects.
We had a very, very broad mandate. We could call evidence on anything, and we did. We went all around the province. We just covered the whole gamut and everything. There was nothing that we didn't look at. And it took us 1 year to do that, and then immediately we sat down to write the final report with over 60 recommendations. And it was well received by the industry and the whole safety community.
In the report, we were somewhat hard on the Workers' Compensation Board. Initially, I think they'd been fairly antagonistic about why on earth do we need the Minister of Labour interfering here? This is our responsibility. But we did find some serious shortcomings, and they've addressed quite a lot of those. Now, they got the message. One of the prime lessons in this and all safety issues is to learn that we're all in this together. And you can't just blame workers for everything. You can't just blame employers for everything. We're all in this together.
I hope the legacy is that the whole industry safety has improved over what it was 30 years ago. But for those 3 widows and a mother, you cannot say definitively that they've got justice. You know, if things hadn't happened the way they had, they would still have their loved ones, and they don't have them.
There's no monetary amount of money that could have replaced any of the 4 men that died that day that would fix it. I think if there was somebody to blame, they know it themselves, and they're paying the price themselves. And keeping it in the forefront, I think, is a great thing, and it brings attention to what happened and hopefully improvement for change.
Losing my dad when I was 13 has affected my life to this day. And in some ways, there's still a 13-year-old boy inside here that misses his dad. We were hoping that my father and the other 3 workers didn't die in vain, and that there would actually be stronger regulations or stronger enforcement to ensure workplaces were safer.
Life is short. You know, the lesson is live every day as if it were your last, and love the ones around you. That's the only lesson I've got.